Okay, thank you. Can everybody see that?
Yes, I can say it.
Okay, so welcome to this. Thank you, Barry, for that introduction. And I'm really grateful to be here tonight. And I'm really pleased to be talking to you about the subject, philatelic passports. And these are probably recognizable to you. I'm sure that you will have you'll probably have seen these. If you've been to a big stamp fair, been to a big stamp show, you will probably have seen these things, and you might even have some sitting at home in a drawer. And what I'd like to do tonight is just take you through a little bit about philatelic passports. I'm really going to talk a little bit about my experience with these as well, and some of the funny things I've discovered, things to look out for in passports that I've collected. And I'm hoping it will ignite a renewed appreciation for these things, because actually they're not actually that common to find out in the wild. So is that going to work? Right. There we go. Right. So it all starts here. This is the Stamp World London official passport issued for the show in 1990, May 1990. This is actually my passport from when I went. I went with my dad and my little brother, and me and my brother, we had a passport. And in fact, my dad had a passport as well. And what's interesting about this is these are individually numbered. So you can see on the front there, this is number 2375. That was my passport. I wrote my name and address in it in the way a 14-year-old would. And we went around all the different booths, and well, we went around several different booths, and we got various stamps in the passport. And these are some of the pages from the passport. It was arranged like this. So you went and you got a stamp, and you'd get it cancelled on the different stall you went to, and it would tell you which stand number you could go if you wanted to get a particular thing. And these are just like I say, just a few of the pages. I always liked the New Zealand stamp. It was a round stamp. I thought that was exciting. It had a nice picture of a kiwi on it. I always quite liked the little kiwi on the cancellation as well. Obviously, the Isle of Man, you want a picture of a steam train. Who doesn't like steam trains? This page on the right with Spain, Swaziland, and Sweden is probably the double page that has the most stamps on in the entire passport, because I didn't fill it, because obviously that you had to buy these stamps from the various different stalls, and I didn't have an infinite supply of money. But it's interesting looking back at which countries I did get stamps from, and actually a couple of countries that I particularly wanted stamps from were countries that I had a personal connection to. So when I was little, my family lived in the Gambia for a while, so we went to the Gambia stand, and we got this rather sort of bizarrely anachronistic stamp, as is ever the case with stamps from the Gambia, it feels like, and we got that stamp. And also my grandma was from the Faroe Islands, and I was very excited. The Faroese Stamp Association, like Stamp Philatelic Bureau or whatever they are, were there. Postwerk Fourier. And what's interesting about the Faroese stamp is that, unlike a lot of the other generic stamps that we use, this is actually dated. So you can see that I went to Stamp World on the 5th of May, or 5th of May, as it would be in Faroese. And so that's kind of interesting to me anyway, even though that is probably the most boring cancellation you could possibly get, really, and think. I also went to the Finland stand, and I was very excited. I remember being really excited about this stamp because it had a hologram on it, and for me that was like, this is so cool, it's got a hologram on the stamp. And I know that now we're looking at something and thinking, well, that's just, we see gimmicky stuff on stamps all the time, but back then holograms were quite unusual on stamps, and I was quite excited about getting that. And then a final page, and I've included this page for a couple of reasons. One is because this was probably one of the last big stamp exhibitions that the USSR Stamp Bureau went to, because within a year or so, well, certainly within 2 years, the USSR didn't exist anymore. And I got this very attractive propaganda stamp celebrating Lenin. I went to the booth. I got that stamp. I didn't know at the time that the USSR was about to collapse, but it was, when do you get sort of stamps from that country? And then also there was a United Nations stand, and I do find it kind of amusing now that you have the you have the United Nations next to the USSR, and obviously still sort of the very tail end of the Cold War. And I quite like the Stamps for Peace logo that the United Nations were using, and the juxtaposition with one of the main protagonists in the Cold War, I think, is quite fun. But there you go. I was obviously a weird kid, because I don't imagine most kids would have gone, oh, I've got to get a USSR stamp, but that was me. There were a few other countries that I got as well. I'm not going to show you every single page from every single passport, because we'd be here all night, and you'd never invite me to come and speak again at one of these. This is one thing, though, just to flag up, if you've got one of these passports and you think it's complete, have a look on the back. Warsaw Security Printers gave away free stamps and stamped them for you as well. And one of these passports is not complete unless it has the stamp of quality from Warsaw Security Printers in the back of it as well. So that's something just to keep an eye out on. And then I bought a few years later, several years later, only a couple of years ago, actually, I bought the complete version of this. Somebody was selling it on eBay. And this is pages and pages of stamps. Every entry is full in the thing. And so I'm just showing a few different pages here to show sort of like what that looks like. And some of these are more interesting than others. I'll just point out one thing, which is the Intergovernmental Philatelic Corporation, and it was the same with the Crown agencies. They would literally put in several stamps and representing all the different countries that they had, and they'd stamp them all the same. So you could do quite a lot by visiting one stand if you wanted to. And these are some interesting cancels. I quite like the Bermuda one with the map in the magnifying glass. That is a map of Bermuda. You can see there the characteristic fishhook shape on the island. And I quite like the zebra on the Botswana one as well. Although you can't see him too well, he's camouflaged against the stamp. And some more interesting cancels. The West Germany one is a really massive cancel. I think what's quite interesting here is you've got a tortoise on the Vietnam stamp, and it looks like a tortoise on the outer islands of Seychelles cancellation. Obviously, it's a whale on the stamp. So you can see, if you collected tortoises, this would be an interesting page to show, because you've got it on both a stamp and a cancellation. And that eagle on the Zambia cancellation looks proper menacing. So that's good fun. So, and also, and this is something else that came in, you're flicking through this and suddenly you see something like a picture of, well, we all recognize who that is on the Iraq stamp. Of course, that is Saddam Hussein, then ruler of Iraq. And it's funny to think that this passport from a year or so, a couple of years before the first Gulf War, you sometimes get that kind of bizarre thing where you flick through one of these passports and you see something like, wow, I remember that guy. And also in the passport, just to flag up, Portugal, Azores, Madeira, and Macau were all on the same stand. And whoever filled this in decided to get both a Portugal stamp and a Macau stamp. Obviously, didn't have space to fit the others in. So, and again, if you're thinking of funny juxtapositions, Saddam Hussein on the stamp at the top, and an exhortation to love, and on the stamp on the bottom. It's kind of amusing there, really, but maybe it's just me and my weird sense of humor. But you get these juxtapositions throughout these passports, because obviously stamps have lots of different themes, and I think that's quite funny. So, oh yeah, and then the person who filled this out, it wasn't enough for them to fill every single page on the thing. They also, there were some pages at the back where you could make notes, and they went and got some additional stamps from countries that weren't in the passport, and they stuck them all there. So you can see, I mean, they're mainly, well, there's some African stamps and British Indian Ocean territory as well. So that you always check, like I say, if you're flicking through, it's not just the countries. Sometimes you get some random stuff in the back. You'll see some more of that later. It gets very random, I promise you. So the first philatelic passport was issued for a stamp exhibition in Montreal in 1967. I don't have one of those. So the earliest ones I have are from Interphil 76, which was in 1976. Big philatelic exhibition in Philadelphia. I almost said a Philatelic exhibition, a Philatelic exhibition in Philadelphia, and obviously celebrating the American bicentennial. And you might have seen these pages before, because I include these in my, or I include this page in my sort of talk about the Statue of Liberty, because San Marino included the Statue of Liberty on one of their stamps celebrating the American bicentennial. So these are there's a lot more space on these pages. So you can see here there were some really big cancellations going on, and the Australian cancellation, the ratio of stamp to cancellation on that Australia page has got to be I don't know, 6 to 1. It's kind of it's kind of funny. And because you could do that, you could actually fit quite a lot on here. Now, I've actually got 2 copies of this passport filled out by different people, and on the one side, the person filling it out has chosen a block of 4 stamps, and on the other, in the other passport, they decided to stick in an entire miniature sheet. And so you get that variation between the passports, which makes that no 2 are the same, and that makes them quite fascinating, really, to see kind of what choices people are making. So you get that kind of added bonus. I will say on both the Interphil passports I've got, that the selection of Great Britain stamps, it's the same thing. It's one of these strips of Machin heads, and it's rather uninspiring compared to some of the other stamps that are in there, really. I'm surprised they obviously didn't take any, or maybe they did, but nobody picked them. They didn't take any of their sort of commemorative issues. You could have a strip of Setenant different values, which I suppose is quite interesting. But the annoying thing is they didn't actually put the cancellation over the top of it, which is quite funny. West Germany existing on the left, and again, this is something else that's interesting from sort of the older passports, is you get West Germany and you get East Germany, and whatever else. You also get this kind of annoying thing where people have obviously turned the passport sideways to stick in the miniature sheet, and then turned the passport sideways in the other direction to stick in the miniature sheet. So you open the page and these 2 miniature sheets face in opposite directions, which, if you've got a slight perfectionist streak, is a little bit annoying. And hey, there you go, Lenin makes an appearance again. He was a popular guy in the Soviet Union, so he appeared on a lot of things. I do wonder if the USSR stamp agency deliberately took massive miniature sheets of Lenin to the stamp exhibition celebrating 200 years of the United States of America. I do wonder if there was a little bit of like I don't know, propaganda going on there. Possibly. Crown agents, they had an interesting approach. Obviously, they were representing a number of different countries, so you can get a different mix of stamps on there, and some of the passports have like multiple countries on the one page. German Democratic Republic didn't do any cancellations, but whoever was manning that stall wrote German Dem Republic Interphil 1976 and then signed it. And I think the 2 passports I've got have got exactly the same thing. I strongly suspect that there was some guy, you can see his pen looks like it was running out there. There was some guy who spent his entire time officially signing these passports. So I don't know. I'm sure he had hand cramp by the end of the thing. So moving on a few years then, this really tickles me. It's the official authorized passport of the of Capex 87, which was issued for the big exhibition in Toronto, celebrating the 100th anniversary of the RPS of Canada. I love that it's the official authorized passport. I mean, I don't know if there were unofficial passports or unauthorized passports, but they felt the need to say that it was not just official, it was also authorized, and that did amuse me quite a lot. This is an interesting, it's an interesting passport. It's very nicely set out. I particularly liked the cancellation from Japan there, which features the CN Tower in the foreground and Mount Fuji in the background. So that was quite cool. CN Tower, obviously a major landmark in Toronto, which is where this was taking place. This also amused me because there's adverts in this passport, and there's an advert for these new stamps that the Bermudan stamp agency are bringing. They're bringing to this this thing. It's probably one of your first opportunities to. Well, it's the Bermudan, it's the government philatelic agencies actually, but it's your first chance to buy these new stamps. But if you look on the left, whoever's gone along and picked the stamps to go on this decided that they couldn't be bothered with the new stamps, and they've gone for a set with boats on instead. So obviously advertising didn't work there. That just tickles me. I would like to find another one of these passports sometime, and hopefully it'll have those stamps in the advert actually on the page opposite. I'm surprised whoever was running that stand let them get away with that. Really, they should have insisted, no, you're buying these. But especially as I think if they were, that those ones on the right are a lot more expensive, like in terms of face value. Whoever's gone in, it's gone. Oh no, I like the cheap ones, please. I want the 5 cent and the 10 cent. I don't want the $1.50, thanks. And just to flag up something here, a couple of things here. This is a page that again it amused me. Alderney only started issuing stamps in 1983. I don't know if this is the first in philatelic passport Alderney appeared in. It won't be the last. I'll be mentioning them again in a minute, but that's quite interesting seeing different agencies appear and different countries, and obviously seeing countries disappear as well. Then on the right we have the Hungary, and we have the Hungary Stamp Agency in North America. Now, considering this is in the era of the Cold War, and Hungary was behind the Iron Curtain, I can only imagine that the people who were manning the Hungary Stamp Agency in North America, if they were actually from Hungary, were probably spies. I mean, I can't prove that, but it makes you think, good grief, that would have been a rather cushy job to get if you were living in Hungary. And I wonder who got sent off to man the Hungary Stamp Agency in North America. And even if they weren't, I think that would be a fabulous setting for a novel. I think that would be quite amusing. You could definitely have, sort of, I don't know, spies and philately, would that go together? I don't know. This is my imagination getting away with me, but I thought that was a really interesting, interesting cancellation. Sparked my imagination, as you can tell. This passport also had some late entries. So these notes pages on the left here, where you can see the Azores and Belgium, those were included as loose leaves at the end of the passport. So I didn't know that, and it arrived and these pages fell out when I opened it, and I thought, oh no. But it turned out that they were meant to be loose all along. So that's something, again, if you're buying one of these passports, be aware that sometimes additional pages were added. And I've just included this New Zealand one here for two reasons. First of all, this is actually dated. It hasn't got the overall dates of the exhibition. So you can see that this passport was, or this particular stamp was stuck in on the 21st of June, 1987. But also I quite like, they're really going on the Kiwi theme here, because you've got this additional cancellation which they've put on from the New Zealand Post stand with a Kiwi in as well. And they really like that Kiwi theme, and I've always liked that sort of design. So two reasons to show you that. 1997 was a pretty big year for Hong Kong, but before the handover back to China, there was the 11th Asian International Stamp Exhibition. There was another passport. You can see this one's arrived. I mean, again, this is another eBay purchase, and it's got a bent cover, but in a way that kind of makes it all the more charming. This is another passport that was completed by somebody, and then they decided to sell it on eBay. Interesting selection of stamps and cancellations as ever. I particularly like the fact that Great Britain had got their act together and started taking commemoratives to give out at these events, and obviously that is one of my favorite stamps ever, featuring the Danger Mouse, a uniquely British hero. And if we do have any people attending the call or attending this meeting from outside the UK, you might not have heard of Danger Mouse, but look him up on YouTube. He's great. And you know, a uniquely British animation. It's a bit of a spoof of James Bond. It's a bit of a spoof of espionage and that sort of thing. It was a kids' cartoon that I grew up loving in the 80s. By the late 90s, it featured on a stamp, and it'd been stuck into this passport here. But you can see the mix here of countries, and what's quite handy is when it was quite interesting when they do countries according to alphabetical order, and you get Great Britain, Greenland, Grenada all on the same page. Just some more examples of interesting stamps. I really like that Mongolia stamp. I think that's really cute. And you can see sort of like the different themes, and this is just to show, like, if you had themes of I don't know, boats or planes, then obviously a page like this would look quite good in a talk. But I'm not 100% sure what this is advertising on the right. But you know, if you know your Mongolian stamps, you'll probably recognize that. And there's you know, and that could well fit into a theme as well, and it'd be a way of getting an unusual stamp into a theme, perhaps. Just some more examples. The one thing I did think was a bit weird on this one is the Lion King stamp from Uganda. And the Lion King had come out 3 years previously, so obviously Uganda were using up some old stamps. You know, the Tuvalu stamp is an official stamp. It has an official overprint on it, which is a bit odd and unusual. I don't really know what the story is there, or why they were using that. But there you go. And the cancellation on that stamp is actually of a bull, because we were heading into the year of the bull, and that was that comes up in a few other things. Again, a notes page for countries that weren't represented with their own stands. So Ireland there with the lovebirds on the stamp. I think that's a fun little cartoon. Israel didn't have a weren't included as a country in the passport, but they released a they'd released a miniature sheet for this stamp exhibition. So so that's been stuck there in the notes page. We've got a large miniature sheet there about it being the year of the bull, and this has been, or year of the ox, I should say, rather. And this is for, you know, this has been released, you know, by Hong Kong for the specifically for the Philatelic exhibition. And then we've got a couple of, you know, other stamps from other places that are included on the notes page as well. I would say as well, I mean, actually thinking about it, that's not a Hong Kong thing. That's a New Zealand thing. If you look at the postmark at the top, New Zealand have taken a step away from using their usual kiwi on their stamp, and they've actually got a seal. He's upside down as you look at it there. But yeah, sorry, this is a New Zealand miniature sheet on the left-hand side, and I think that's quite interesting as well. So, you know, if anyone collects seals, I don't know how often they use the seal in their cancellations, but that's there. So a couple of passports now from 1999, and the one on the right, the French one, is one of the few where I've actually met the person who filled it in. Some of you might know John. He's a stamp dealer. I met him at Swimpex this year, and I found this in his sort of box of random stuff that he was selling, and I was quite excited. And we were talking about it, and he said, "Oh, I remember going around and filling that in." And so I asked him to pose for a photo with it. And I did tell him at some point I'm going to be doing a talk about philatelic passports, and can I use the photo? And he did give me his consent. So these are both from the same year, and the one on the left, the green one there, is from the Nuremberg show in early 1999. So we'll deal with that one first. And what's slightly interesting about this passport is that it's another one where I have a photo of the person who filled it in, because the way that these passports were set up, you got to put your photo, you got to stick your photo and your name in the front of it. I don't know anything about Karl-Heinz Kramer. I know Walnsach isn't too far away from Nuremberg. It looks like a very pretty village according to the pictures I've seen online. So, you know, I thought I'd better look that up, see where it is. But Karl-Heinz, he went round and he filled out this passport, and then years later I bought it on eBay. He had a very good eye for stamps, I think, Karl-Heinz did, and he understood about positioning stamps so that you could get the cancellations in quite nicely. And he picked, he picked an interesting miniature sheet there from Armenia. And he was very good. I've got to say, give Karl-Heinz his credit. He managed to avoid smudging on most pages, but not on this one, because you can see a little bit of the ink from the Azerbaijan stamp has crept over onto the Argentinian side there. That is a problem you find with these passports. People get them stamped, they close them, before you know it, you've got your print smudged and everything else. Quite interesting. The one problem I would say with this passport is that actually the space for stamps isn't very big, and you can see this really comes to a head on this Faroese one, where they're doing this miniature sheet, and you can't see any of he stuck it over or someone has stuck it over the information about the Faroe Islands. And I've included this. I know Peter Wood's on the call. I was flicking through this and I saw that the Ireland page had the stamp from their joint issue with the United States about Irish immigration that was released in 1999, and it particularly caught my eye because you get half of the word immigration, or the middle half of the word immigration, on the sort of selvage there that's also been included in the stamp. And I thought, oh, that's interesting, you know, because Peter and I had a conversation about these stamps, and then I flicked a bit further on and I found that on the American page they had the American version of the stamp, so they actually had both stamps from that joint issue appearing on different pages, which you know, I don't know, I just find that kind of thing really, you know, great. That really sort of quite excited me in a way, because it's sort of like, oh yeah, you know, that sort of marries up kind of thing. And again, if you wanted to illustrate this stamp issue, this is actually quite a funny way of doing it, I feel. So moving on to the French one, again, this is one where you have to put your name in. I don't know whether Jon had moved since getting this, so I carefully sort of masked his actual address there, apart from you know he lives in Angleterre. And what I would say, Jon, being a guy into stamps, he done a spectacular effort of going through and putting in miniature sheets. Some of them are on the wrong pages, like this Falkland Islands one is actually on one of the French pages, but he obviously didn't want 2 pages of French stamps, and actually on the left you got the St. Helena miniature sheet as well. So, you know, first thing I thought, oh, okay, he's moving in. He's obviously sticking stuff in where it has space, and why not? You know, it's his passport; he can do what he likes. But now he sold it to me, and I've got these things. But what I would say about Jon is he's understood the importance of having these facing in the right direction. So if you turn the passport round, they both face the same way. So that's really good. A really lovely miniature sheet from Indonesia. I really like this. I love the comparison of the Eiffel Tower with the building from Indonesia there. The one on the right, I'm less fussed on really, and it's obviously been cut down from a bigger sheet, and I'm not really sure what's going on with that. So you know, but I do really like that miniature sheet from Indonesia. It's a French exhibition, so they grouped all their French colonies together, and so you'd stick several stamps, or former French colonies, I should say. Sorry, they've grouped the former French colonies together, and so they all appear on the same page. With what you feel about sort of modern African commemorative stamps, I know a lot of collectors feel that they perhaps aren't, you know, really stamps or whatever, but some of these do seem to actually relate to things related to the countries in question. I don't know how many lions they have left in Burkina Faso. I'm willing to bet it's 0, but I'm sure at some point they had some. And I just included this page to point out that they decided to put Denmark and the Faroe Islands together. And I mentioned earlier that my grandmother was from the Faroe Islands, and I know that were she still alive, she would take offense at this, because she was very much of the opinion that the Faroe Islands, may technically be under Danish sovereignty, but also most definitely were an independent nation in their own right. So so she would have balked at this. It's the same miniature sheet as appeared in the other passport. So that's the other thing you see is obviously the Faroese Philatelic Agency were taking these to all the stamp exhibitions that they went to that year. So yeah, a little bit of controversy there, well, only in terms of my family and my, rampantly independently minded grandma, but it did make me laugh when I saw that. And then we get to these pages, and this is obviously all the stamps that the Crown agents had at this stamp show, and they've obviously said, "Oh, here's all the stamps, and you can go and stick them in." And I mean, okay, it's perhaps not the sort of most attractive thing. What I would say is there is some kind of thematic work going on there. I think these are all islands, almost all islands. And most of them are kind of grouped roughly together. But then you get to pages like this, which we're kind of like a little bit all over the place. This is France Philately 2000. It wouldn't be 2000, it'd be Du Mil or something. And this is just a collection of sort of fairly random countries. I think you've got Chile and Chad and various other things. And then you get the IGPC, Intergovernmental Philatelic Corporation, and this actually slightly unsettles me because there is no order to these stamps. You've got African stamps and sort of stamps from the West Indies and stamps from the Pacific, and they're all just stuck in next to each other with no kind of grouping going on. And I find that a little bit I wouldn't say upsetting, but it's sort of, that I said about that perfectionist streak earlier. It's kind of like, oh, wouldn't you have put like, Uganda and Tanzania and Sierra Leone all together and Ghana, and then put like, but obviously not. They've just all gone in, as they are. And again, a notes page with additional stuff that didn't fit anywhere else. So these are all off the Crown agents. And this is everything from Antarctica to Africa to the Pacific Ocean to, the Indian Ocean, I should say, to, the Atlantic. It's just like this is all over the place. But to make up for it, opposite there on the South Korean page, we have a really lovely, fun postmark featuring a cartoon Eiffel Tower. And I don't know if this postmark was really available anywhere else. Presumably anything that was postmarked at this event would have received it. But if you are a collector of the Eiffel Tower, then that's quite an interesting postmark. It's a little bit different, and you might not find that anywhere else but in one of these passports. Whew, right, sorry, I've been talking quite a lot there. 10 years after Stamp World 1990, I went back to London for the Stamp Show 2000. And again, I was going with my dad, and I was also going with my wife by that point. She came along, and I was very excited because the UK had just issued a stamp featuring a Dalek. And actually, I got to meet the Dalek. And you can see there's a picture of me pretending to be scared as a Dalek bursts through the wall. And I'm sure several people here will remember the Stamp Show 2000. You might even have decided to pose in a comedy fashion next to a Dalek for fun. But it wasn't just the Daleks that really got my attention. It was the fact that the Wombles were appearing on stamps as well. And this brings us back to Alderney. So the Wombles had been relaunched on television. And again, if you're not from the UK and you don't know what the Wombles are, do look them up. They are a fab sort of set of children's characters. They were a very popular TV show. They were also a series of books and stuff, and they're great. But the Wombles have been relaunched, and a couple of new characters have come in, and one of the characters is called Alderney, and Alderney, the island, which I think really is part of the Guernsey post office, were capitalizing on this, and they produced stamps featuring Alderney, the Wombles. So I couldn't pass up the opportunity to stick a Dalek stamp in my passport, and also to get Alderney, get a Womble in my passport as well. I didn't fill out many pages in this, so there are quite a few gaps. However, one thing about this is that there were a lot of countries that were different. A lot of countries that had arrived on the scene since 1990. One of them was Moldova, featured on this page. And I've always liked this Netherlands stamp. I don't know if you can see it that clearly there, but basically the goalkeeper is making a wonderful save, and then he realizes that last minute that it's actually a football boot heading towards his face. And meanwhile, the ball has gone into the goal through his legs. And there aren't that many football stamps that are actually worth looking at more than once, but that is quite an entertaining one. And yeah, I think if you were going to do the funny side or the lighter side of football as a theme, you'd probably want that stamp. And again, fairly apt, I think, at the moment, but Ukraine was another country that I hadn't ever bought a stamp from. And I made sure I went to the Ukraine stand and I got a stamp on that. But unfortunately, you can see there the smudge has come across from the USA stamp on the other side. One thing about these passports is the pages were really shiny and it took ages for the ink to dry. So actually, they do get quite messy. And so then I bought I didn't fill that when I was at the stamp show, but I have bought one since that is full. And I've noticed a few interesting things about it. One is that the Crown agents did a variety of different stamps to go in the thing. They would stick all the stamps in, and then you'd get 4 on a page, and they'd all have the same cancellation. Then you'd turn over, and there'd be another 4 stamps with a different cancellation. And the 4 cancellations they used featured these 4 buildings. Obviously, Tower Bridge and Tower of London are fairly recognisable. But if you know what the one on the top right was, feel free to pop it in the chat, and we'll see if you've got that right later, because that is a building. It is kind of still there, but it was certainly the newest of the buildings that featured on these things. It'd be interesting to know if anyone remembers what that was. And so this is an example of what Crown agents did. So they would stamp the same thing on all the different countries, except on this one they decided that the Kiribati one had a first day of issue. This stamp was a first day of issue. I think it must have been issued at the show, and so they used that stamp instead. Although it does say first day of issue, 22nd to the 28th of May 2000. So that's a very long day. That's actually a 6-day first day of issue, really. Yeah. And again, I'm not really sure what this guy is doing on the Nauru stamp. I think he's vaulting a horse or something, but it looks rather painful. But it is commemorating the Commonwealth Games, and that is something that people do. It's a kind of sport, I suppose. So that might be it. And some other London architecture. If you're into London architecture, I really like the representation of Tower Bridge on the Swiss postmark. New Zealand Post also had Tower Bridge on their postmark. If you're into Tower Bridge and you wanted to represent that, these are a couple of good examples. John Lister was representing Anguilla and Montserrat and quite a few other countries as well. And I included that for laughs, really. That Montserrat cancellation, absolutely massive. But the benefit of these cancellations, again, they are actually dated with an actual date, not just the date of the conference, of the exhibition. So, you can see when this was actually done, which is quite interesting. And this is just an example of another organization. So this is Intergovernmental Philatelic Corporation or Philatelic Association or whatever they are. And very heavy hand stamps. They use the same one on every one. They all smudged. This struck me as an interesting page because 3 of the stamps feature Mother Teresa, who had passed away 3 years earlier. Again, one of those weird things, I guess, if you were going to do a thematic presentation on Mother Teresa. Here's 3 stamps featuring her. Just odd seeing them all grouped together like that, really. So coming into the 21st century, a very small passport. This is from Monaco, Monaco Phil 2004. This was owned by a chap called Guillaume. I know that actually wrote his name in the front of it. And just, a few interesting stamps there. A lot of space on these things. One thing I like about this is that they didn't just do the cancellation over the stamp, they also did the cancellation separately on the page, so you can actually read them. Although whoever was doing it for Russia there decided to stick it over the printing at the bottom of the page as well, just to sort of, you can't have a clear cancellation, you've got to have something underneath it, I suppose. But the person from San Marino knew what they were doing. This is a dual purpose passport because Guillaume also used it as an autograph book. And so inside are the signatures of 3 people: Martin Mork, Pierre Albuisson, and Odile Lamousse. And I don't know if I hope that's how you say their names. Apologies if anybody here knows them and knows that that is not how you say their names. But does anyone know who they are? I wondered if anyone would know who they are. I'll give you a couple of seconds to think. I recognize that name. Where do I know that name from? If you said they're all stamp engravers, you would be correct. They are all stamp engravers, and they've all worked for La Poste, and they've all worked for the Monaco stamp agency as well. In fact, this miniature sheet was released at Monaco Phil. Features 3 portraits of Grace Kelly and her royal insignia at the end of the on the label at the end there. And at the bottom, this show card was issued at Monaco Phil. Actually, yeah, sorry, I don't know if this miniature sheet was actually released at Monaco Phil, but it was released around about the same time. The show card was definitely released for Monaco Phil. And underneath the pictures, you can see the signatures of the people who design the various things, and you can see on the left there, that's the mark of Pierre Albuisson as seen in the passport, and where he signed it for Guillaume. And also under the third one along there, the €350 is Martin Mork's signature as seen a minute ago, I think. Now, Odile Lamousse didn't do the other 2, and they were done by other engravers. But I think that's really quite fun. And again, it's one of those unexpected things. You buy this thing off eBay, you look it up, you think, who are these people? And you find, you got some signatures there. So obviously Guillaume went up to these people. They must have been at the show and asked them to sign his passport for him. And I just think that's quite an interesting little unexpected bonus. And then to bring everything bang up to date, in 2016, several members of our society went to the New York Stamp Show, and one member, and I'll embarrass her, it was Wendy. Next time I saw her, she said, "Oh, I got something for you," and she passed me one of these. And obviously, knowing that I collect the Statue of Liberty, these rather lovely Statue of Liberty stamps inside the passport, complete with a Statue of Liberty on the cancellation. I was very excited to receive this, as you can imagine, but also it doubles up because I also, and I don't think Wendy knew this, I've also got a little bit of a thing collecting philatelic passports. And the one I'm going to show you, so this is a blank page, and the reason I'm showing you this blank page is because on the left there, the American Topical Association put in an advertisement saying topicals, and basically you could stick anything you wanted in there, and presumably they had a super booth, and you could go along to their booth and they would potentially put some interesting hand stamps on it for you or something. I don't know. And I think that's a really interesting way of interacting with people and getting them perhaps interested in topical stamps. And I don't know, Mr. Chairman, if we could ever think about this, if we ever heard that one of the big exhibitions in the UK was going to do a passport, whether we could see about having a British Thematic Association page, and encourage people to come to our stand and get some kind of hand stamp or something. I don't know, but this just really interested me, and it interested me from the point of view of being a thematic collector, actually probably be more of a topical collector, if I'm honest. and as a way of interacting. And so that's just an interesting aside there, and something perhaps that members of our committee can think about, whether we'd ever want to do something like that. So I'm just going to go back through a few of these just to show you some funny things that I've noticed and talk about some errors. So we're only a few slides away from finishing, so so please bear with me. So this is from the Hong Kong 1997 passport. I was looking at it, and I am one of these people who reads the small print, and I noticed something very interesting, which is they got a bit confused about where various British islands were. The Alderney Islands, located in the Channel Islands, no problem with that. Guernsey, located in the Channel Islands, no problem with that. The Isle of Man, located in the Channel Islands, no. So this is quite funny. And when you look at it, they clearly have mixed up the Isle of Man and Jersey, because they've put Jersey's geographical location as northwestern Europe, which is probably true, but you'd actually say the Channel Islands if you were saying that everyone else was in the Channel Islands. So they've clearly mixed those two up. So that's one of those errors that's actually in the passport itself, which is quite funny. Most of the other errors that you find are errors made by the people sticking the stamps in, and it would appear that British Islands are problematic, because going back to the interfill passports, you can see that in one of the passports, Guernsey and Jersey got mixed up by whoever was sticking the stamps in. So on the Guernsey page, you got this lovely set of 4 Jersey stamps commemorating the establishment of America, and in fact the establishment of New Jersey in America. And on the Jersey page, you've got these 2 stamps from Guernsey. And I thought, well, that's quite funny. And then when I had my second interfill passport, I opened it up and I realized that someone had made a very similar mistake, because they'd obviously started sticking Jersey stamps onto the Isle of Man page and then thought, hang on a second, this isn't right. And so you've got Jersey, you got a Jersey stamp and an Isle of Man stamp on the Isle of Man page. So, clearly there's some confusion there, and I don't blame people for not knowing where these random tiny islands are, but it is kind of amusing. So this is a mistake that I made. These are 2 pages from the Stamp Show 2000 passport, and on the left is the stamp that appeared is the stamp and cancellation that appeared in the completed one that I bought, and you can see that's been stamped by the Japanese Philatelic Agency. I went to the wrong stand, and I picked a stand. I was selling stamps and doing hand stamps, and I thought it was the official Japanese post office or whatever, but actually it was the Japanese Philatelic Society. And so mine's on the right there. Neither of us made a mistake with Kazakhstan. Well, we got that right. We went to the right place, got the right stamp, got the right cancel, but I got the wrong cancel. And at the time I was a bit annoyed, thinking, oh, I've done this, I've gone to the wrong place. But actually looking at those 2 cancellations, I think I prefer mine, and I think I prefer the Japan Philatelic Society one, and I'm reasonably certain that I'm probably the only person, or one of the few people, to have this in their passport, whereas everyone else would have had the other one. So maybe that worked out right. And then this is just mysterious. So I don't know what is going on here, but I looked at this page and then I looked at it twice, and I thought there's something wrong here. And I realized that Pakistan stamp in the bottom left is a used stamp that's been stuck in there. And this cancellation on it is one of the hand stamps that you could go at the entrance to the exhibition. You could go and you could you had these hand stamps available, and you could stamp various things and send them to yourself or whatever else. And there were different cancellations for different things, different days. And I don't know what the story is here. Maybe Pakistan didn't turn up at the to show their stand. Maybe this guy got home, or was on his way out and realized he hadn't done this page, and he thought, oh, I just can't be bothered. But that cancellation, which was clearly done at the exhibition, does go over that stamp. So it's tied to the page by that cancellation. So I'm not really sure. Maybe he went to a dealer and he said, look, I'd just like to buy a Pakistan stamp, please. Or maybe he had one on his person. I don't know. It's very odd, and it's one of those little mysteries that I guess I'll never have answered, because I don't know who filled this passport out. And that is the end of my presentation. So diolch yn fawr, thank you very much for listening. I hope that you found that interesting. And I particularly wanted to say a thank you to my dad, who took me to Stamp World 90 when I was 14. Filling out that passport really ignited for me a love for stamps and an interest in stamps that has stayed with me for a long time. This is a photo of my dad as we were going to Stamp World 2010, where regrettably there was not a passport to be had. He insisted on carrying his catalogues with him to the stamp exhibition, because obviously stamp dealers would never have a stamp catalogue on their person. And so this is a photo of him as we were making our way in, waiting for a train to take us into the centre of London. So thank you very much for listening, and also thank you very much to my dad for igniting this love of philatelic passports.
Thank you very much, John. Thanks for that. That was truly amazing. I must admit, I've never seen so many philatelic passports in my life, or certainly never heard anybody speak so passionately about them. And I think you're right. They do have an interesting place for a thematic collector. Really impressed with some of the designs and the colours. They're so cheerful. A bit worried about the football stamp you mentioned. Hopefully it's not too appropriate, as they say, at this particular time, letting that goal in. And if there is a passport at the next international here in the UK, I think we know who's going to be manning the stand, aren't you, John, for the BTO?
Have I put myself up forward for that now? Have I?
So thank you very much for a most interesting and totally different presentation on a topic I suspect few of us had paid much attention to over the years, but that truly was most interesting. So thank you very much again, and could we thank him again in the usual manner?
We've got some questions in the chat button.
Yeah, come on to that. So there was a couple of questions I noticed as we're going through. The first one I think was from Charles. Did you select the stamps, or did the dealer select the stamps?
It really depended on the stall. So some that would have a tray of stamps, and you picked which one you wanted. So you know, I've got no excuse. I picked the USSR one featuring Lenin, for example. Other stamps were available. The sometimes you went and they had the one stamp, and some of the ones where like Crown agents did a ton of stamps, you know, a ton of different countries, they'd have a packet with 30 stamps in already, and you had to go through and stick them in. So there was a bit of choice there, or you know, there wasn't. But very often what would happen is there'd be just like a little tub of stamps at the front of the thing, and you went along and you picked which one you wanted. And to answer the other question about them, whether they were being, how they were stuck in, generally speaking, they were mint stamps, so you licked them and you stuck them in.
Really?
I've not got, I mean, I presume maybe they had a sponge or something you could use. I have not got I haven't yet come across any kind of passport where they are not stuck, where they're not licked and stuck in. But in a way, that's part of the fun about them, because you can't. I mean, you could disassemble a passport to mount it and put it into a collection, to put it into a display, but you'd literally have to take it apart probably with a razor blade. You know, you'd have to, or a scalpel. So you know, they're not sort of display quality in that sense, but they are interesting that they're stuck in that moment. So in some respects, that for me, that makes them quite interesting as you know, souvenirs and artifacts and things. Yes.
Yeah. Okay. Was the Millennium Dome or the O2 though?
Yeah, that's right. That's right. It's the Millennium Dome. So you know, it's quite. I was flicking through. I suddenly thought, hang on, that's the Millennium. They've actually done that. The Millennium Dome. It is now the O2 Arena, of course. So it is still there, kind of.
Yeah, a few people got that.
Yeah. Well done, guys.
I didn't see any other questions in the chat, but were there any other questions from anybody?
There were a couple of.
Oh,
sorry.
Yeah.
I'm sorry. Are you talking to me?
Yeah, indeed. Yes.
Oh, didn't know. John, first of all, that was a delightful presentation. Thank you for sharing your love of philatelic passports. I was completely oblivious to their existence, and now I have you to thank, because I'm going to hunt some of these down. Here's why. Well, what I'm seeing there, I am looking for, as a topical collector who likes to do the one-page exhibits that the BTA provides an opportunity for, and as a board member of the American Topical Association, we have our annual one. And I like to create these one-page thematic pieces that tell a story with stamps and beyond. And this is a nice way to display stamps that isn't common. So I have been looking for new ways to extend that thematic story. So you have just given me one. So the question is, if it sounds like essentially an agent or a government is providing a stamp or set of stamps or a certain group that you can choose from, how do I find, I'll be looking for certain stamps related to a theme. Is there any way to know what stamp to expect in what year? Or is there a listing of pictures of these passports somewhere? Anything?
Well, I have wondered about doing something and providing some kind of online repository of images, but I think your best bet is if you know that certain stamps were issued for certain exhibitions, the likelihood is you are going to find those stamps in those things. So obviously Interphil, there were a lot of stamps relating to the bicentennial that were released, and they were sold at Interphil. And you'll have seen in the other passports, there were a lot of stamps released for Stamp World 90. Everybody stuck out a stamp with, you know, either the penny black on or Roland Hill. The other ones, you know, if people did start when people start issuing miniature sheets or stamps for particular events, I know that there's, for me personally, I know that one of the passports I want to get hold of are the ones released for Ameripex in 1986 in Chicago. But the reason I want to do that is because I know that a huge number of people who released stamps in 1986 were releasing stamps relating to the Statue of Liberty centenary, and quite a few combined it with Ameripex. So I know that if I can get hold of an Ameripex passport, then there will be stamps in there that suit my main collecting theme, as it were. But generally speaking, no, you're talking luck of the draw. Really, if you collect, I mean, like going back to the one, I think it was the German one. When I opened that up and saw the Irish immigration joint issue, I instantly thought of Peter, because he's now got his hand up. So, yeah. But I instantly thought of Peter because that's a stamp issue that we've talked about before, and the fact that it was a joint issue, and there is some Statue of Liberty link there, and so when I saw it, and then when I flicked through, I saw it was the other one. I was like, that is so cool. You know, that's an interesting way of displaying it. But somebody else might come along, and if there was a choice of stamps, they might not have had that kind of thing of, I'm going to pick these two stamps because do you know what I mean? So you just don't know, and there's that choice of, you know. So yeah, so I guess my answer is, yeah, there will be some stuff, but it really depends what you're looking for, and otherwise you just got to get lucky.
So we'll look for that compendium of images right after your novel.
Yeah, right after my novel, right after my spy novel set in the Hungarian
we're expecting a presentation on the philatelic spy novel next year here at BTA.
Yeah, they'll probably disappear me, so I won't be able to present on
yes.
it. So.
Thank you for that. Peter, you had a question.
Well, yes, I mean, firstly was to say, you know, as John pointed out, that was a brilliant one to get the joint issue immigration, you know, for the Irish theme. But of course, it was all the way through, because the Grace Kelly sets with signed by the designers, I mean, brilliant. And Montserrat, and it was the fairy tales of the world or whatever. And what do they show? They show the Irish leprechaun on the, you know. So we've had 3 Irish theme ones, Brilliant, you know. So there are some passports there that, you know, could take a place in a different collection.
Andrew.
Yeah, near the end there of really interesting presentation, but kind of almost off the wall. But anyway, I noticed at the end you picked up that whoever was printing the passport was geographically challenged about the Isle of Man being in the Channel Islands. Is that right? I mean, I think it was they were. I think I spotted in the small print, particularly when they went onto the geography. Every second or third page there was an issue, but the one I liked most, which wasn't a mistake, was that New Zealand was described as being southeast of Australia, which to anybody who kind of understands New Zealand and Australia would find that a bit insulting. There was another. They said the capital of Montserrat was Plymouth, but I think by that time Plymouth was under all the volcanic ash and had been abandoned. I'm not sure what year was that. And there was another one where and I suspect they all do this, they put the capital of Nauru in, and Nauru is one of possibly the only country in the world that doesn't have a capital city.
Oh.
Its government is in one place, but in its constitution, it has no capital city. Yes, it doesn't need one. It's a small island. But I think reading the small print is kind of as interesting as some of the stamps and postmarks.
Yeah. Thanks for that, Andrew. John, you had a question.
Yes, I just wondered, as a 14-year-old, John, if you ventured into Stampland at Alexandra Palace in the grounds of that place, and whether you've got a Stamp Active label in your passport.
Oh, you know what? I don't have a Stamp Active label in my passport.
Because that's where we launched Stamp Active on the 6th of May, the day after you went.
Yeah, well, actually, I went twice, and I think I've got cancellations from the 5th and the 7th of May. So were you only there on the 6th? Because I
was in Stampland for the whole of the, time, but.
No, I didn't. I have got quite a bit of paraphernalia from when I was a kid and I first got into it, like my Stamp Bug Club sticker. Don't know if you remember the Stamp Bug Club.
Oh, very much so, yes.
But no, I don't think we did. I mean, it's weird. I think because we went with my dad and he was very interested in seeing the exhibits and things, we kind of got dragged around the main thing, and then occasionally, when we got annoying, he'd give us a few quid and say, go and get some stamps for your passport, and we'd disappear off, and then it was like, oh, where are we going to go? And yeah, it's a bit it's an odd one. I mean, it was quite some time ago. I don't really remember it that well. I remember the train journeys as well, because we were going from Shrewsbury to London on the train. So I mean, I don't know how much time we actually spent in the exhibition really, but my dad went another day as well without us. Where I think he probably indulged his love of looking at every single item in the philatelic exhibits. He's not here to defend himself, so I can say what I like about it.
Thank you.
Okay, any other questions? No? Okay. Well, thank you again, John, for a truly quite remarkable presentation. I really enjoyed it, and it is totally different. I really like that. And I've made a note for your name for 2020, no, 2030, sorry, just
2030, yeah.
Hold on a minute, 2025, we've got Eurofilex coming.
Yes. Indeed. Anyway, thank you all very much. And I think I'll draw this to a close then, unless there's a last note. Nobody's asked anything. So yeah, so thank you all very much for coming, and I look forward to seeing you all next time. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Hold on. Thank you. Hold on. Okay.